Hi there. In this episode, a top 6 list. The most marquee top 40 band keyboard players of the 80s. That's a highly qualified statement, and I'm setting additional parameters. I need them because I have over 60 bands and keyboardists that could be put on this list, but I need to be selective. Here are the additional parameters. The band had to release a good portion of their music in the 80s, and perhaps that was when they were at their most successful. It has to be a band and not a solo artist. I'm going to allow duos on this list. Solo artists is another list I'm working on. Their work has to include marquee riffs and be a marquee song that placed high in the pop charts. The band has to include both words and music in their songs. So no instrumentalists, because that will also be a different list. I give more weight, meaning a higher position on this list, if they have more marquee riffs than other players. For good or for bad, there's also going to be some subjective criteria. And I'm not going to be able to quantify that well, but that's just the way it is with any art form. You'll notice I didn't use best in the title. In my opinion, there is no best keyboardist. All the keyboardists on this list are highly skilled. With that said, there are certainly keyboardists on this list that are considered some of the best on the planet. One last thing, unless I tell you otherwise, my top lists are just a list. They're not the list. You can tell me in the comments all the great keyboardists from top 40 bands of the 80s that I missed. You can also post your own top 6 list and see how others react. Here's my list. Number 6, Dave A. Stewart. Just in case you don't know, Stewart is one half of the Eurythmics, with the other half being Annie Lennox, with her unique vocals that can be best described as on the edge of reality, like early Kate Bush. They had 2 huge hits with Sweet Dreams Are Made of This and Here Comes the Rain Again. Both of those songs include marquee intros with a substantial use of synthesizers. Love is a Stranger and There Must Be an Angel were lesser hits, and neither of them include what I would call strong marquee intros or strong marquee parts during the song. Love is a Stranger has an unusual intro and sets the tone for some strange and interesting synth tones that flow through the song. It does have that marquee driving drum machine beat and bass line that helped make Sweet Dreams and Here Comes the Rain Again big hits. There Must Be an Angel has more subtle use of synth in the background, along with Stewart's often use of arpeggiated synth lines. I can't say that I'm a fan of the Eurythmics, but I tend to like songs more than bands or artists, although there are bands and artists whose music I tend to love universally. And those bands are essentially the top 4 bands on this list. That said, I do love Sweet Dreams Are Made of This and Here Comes the Rain Again. Stewart deserves to be on this list, and Annie Lennox's voice is often hauntingly unusual. Number 5, Greg Hawkes of the Cars. The Cars had 2 album releases in the 70s and 4 releases in the 80s. The Heartbeat City album is the pinnacle of their success. It was released in 1984 and spawned several hits. The intro on the title track is marquee, and you'll find some interesting synth sounds during the entire song. More on that later. The intro to Magic is magic in that it's a synth effect and not some melodic line, even though the song does get there pretty quickly. The song Drive doesn't have a keyboard marquee intro. It makes great use of filling in the song with pads and a chimey bell line, which is kind of marquee in a way. One last thing I wanted to say about Hawkes, and it's one of the reasons he made it onto this list. It's all the crazy little synth pings, bleeps, and warbles that appear in just about every song. Am I the only person that has noticed this? I doubt it. It's surprising to me that they let him do it, and I believe the songs are better for it. This wouldn't have worked for any of the bands in the top 4. It's different music. For the music of the Cars, it works perfectly. Number 4, Jeff Downes of Asia. I remember reading about a tour they did and Jeff being on stage at the back on an elevated platform with something like 30 keyboards. Way to make us all jealous, right? I love the classical influence in Down's keyboard work. There are some Marquee intro solo synth riffs, but his intros often happen with guitar and or percussion, and that doesn't make them any less compelling. There are so many songs that start with synth, but I wouldn't call them all Marquee riffs. Asia Asia, Asia Astra, Asia Arista, and Asia XXX are the most important albums to me. A little bit of trivia. Don't type Asia XXX or Asia XXX tickets into a search engine on your work computer. Bad idea. Take my word for it. You're going to get a call from your IT security specialist. On later albums prior to XXX, like Arista, Downs was the driving force behind the songs, with musicians brought in to cover guitar and drums. I think he brought somebody in to cover vocals. This means tons of synth, but not necessarily the best songs with incorporated vocals. It's certainly a showcase for his keyboard work. Going back now to 1982, the intro to Only Time Will Tell is heavy and marquee, and who would have thought that it would give way to light percussion, EP, and a vocal. The fast-paced piano chording on verse 1 of Wildest Dreams is ultra cool. The church organ intro on Go and Daylight doesn't make you think of church. Or does it? Hard on Me is high energy from the start with synth and percussion. The intro to Open Your Eyes is full of synth and what sounds like a vocoder. The intro for The Smile Has Left Your Eyes might make you think you made a left turn at Albuquerque and took a seat at a Bach concert. The Heat Goes On has a 40-second intro that starts with piano and synth pad. A lot of Asian music has elaborate and intense intros that settle into something less so. The piano instrumental and fanfare orchestral style at the end of Cutting It Fine is pure Jeff Downs gold. I believe that sums up a large part of his style, and it was very influential on me. Like other bands towards the top of this list, you won't find a lot of mid-song ripping guitar leads. You are more likely to find keyboards. Number 3, Tony Banks of Genesis. I'm a huge fan of Genesis, and moreover, Phil Collins, but I tried to keep that in check and be unbiased. Some people may argue that Genesis released 8 studio albums in the 70s and only 4 in the 80s. That's true, but I'm concentrating on the albums where Phil is the lead singer and the album was recorded as a trio. This started with the album And Then There Were 3, which was the last album released in the 70s. My favorite album is Invisible Touch, and it's their most commercially successful. Also, Tony Banks incorporated a lot of keyboard sounds on this album, and along with Phil's voice, I think it makes it very special. Now, don't forget, Mike Rutherford is in there with guitar, and he's awesome as always. What I recognize every time I listen to this album is the extensive use of synth pad textures and how beautiful and subtle they are. There are some spicy synth riffs too. Some examples of the overall keyboard work are the flute lead on In Too Deep. When was the last time you heard a flute lead on a top 40 song? I don't know, maybe in the 60s during the Flower Child days? I'm not sure. The synth chord intro on Invisible Touch is more subtle than Jump, but it's just as effective. The simple keyboard note pattern on Tonight, Tonight, Tonight flows through most of the song. In Throwing It All Away, the evocative pads, especially on the last verse. Domino is an awesome song with a full cadre of synth sounds. It's never easy for any musician to keep a handle on subtlety, and even more so in a trio, so it's great to have the instrumental, the Brazilian, to allow for a little exuberance. Pop quiz. Which one or more of these songs has a screaming guitar solo midway? Answer, you already know the answer. None of them. They all have guitar, and it's subtle too. This is my favorite album from a band. Here's my tape copy of it. This tape has a story. When I was working in Miami, if I didn't get to the campus by about 7 o'clock, I would have to park off campus. And the campus was in a really bad neighborhood. If you parked off campus, there was a high probability your car would get broken into. Mine got broken into twice. The first time, they stole all my cassette tapes, but they didn't get this one. This one was in the player, and they couldn't make it eject because it wasn't a spring-loaded mechanical mechanism. It was an electronic mechanism. So they didn't get this. They did get the clamshell case for it. Oh well. Number 2. David Paich and Steve Porcaro from the band Toto. Toto released 5 studio albums in the 80s, more than any other decade. All their albums showcased the talents of these former studio musicians. For me, Toto 4 was their best album because it includes 3 of my favorite all-time songs: Rosanna, I Won't Hold You Back, and Africa, which I played at deafening levels in my car back then and occasionally still do. It earned 3 Grammy Awards. Rosanna is a great demonstration of Paich and Porcaro during the mid-break, and don't forget the piano at the end while Steve Lukather wails on guitar. If you want some homework, see how many keyboard instrument sounds you can identify during Rosanna. I don't know how many there are, but it's a lot. Even though Hold the Line was released in 1978, I've got to mention how much I enjoyed playing the intro piano riff in several bands. A little trivia is that Paich and Porcaro contributed to the Yamaha DX7 demo flexi disc that came in one of my keyboard magazines circa 1983. It made me want to buy a DX7 even more. Number 1. This wasn't easy, and any of the top 4 could be number 1 on my list. But I chose Jonathan Cain from the band Journey, and I'm going to tell you why. Cain is a prolific songwriter. Not only did he create a fair number of marquee riffs, he often wrote the entire song or wrote it in collaboration with Steve Perry. Some of the marquee songs are Don't Stop Believin', Faithfully, Open Arms, Center My Love, Separate Ways, Worlds Apart, and Who's Crying Now. The majority of those songs have marquee intros from Cain, and when you hear them, they couldn't be any other song. One thing I love is that he has marquee riffs on both synthesizer and piano. Steve Perry's voice is awesome as always, and the icing on the cake. At this point, that's just about it for this episode, and the list is done, but I'm not done. If you want to stick around for a short time, I'll tell you why a lot of the synth bands of the 80s and their keyboardists didn't make the list. There are a huge number of synth bands from the 80s, perhaps hundreds, but with marquee riffs and marquee top charting songs, not so many. Depeche Mode, New Order, the Pet Shop Boys, Yazoo, OMD, Human League. How could I have missed Nick Rhodes of Duran Duran? But can you name one hit song by Duran Duran? Perhaps you just blurted out, Hungry Like the Wolf. I have my vinyl copy of it here. And it's actually backed with another copy of Like the Wolf. It's just a longer version. The thing is, that song down there is guitar driven. Sure, there's a mostly constant percussive arpeggio and some minor synth work during the mid-song break, but nothing screams marquee keyboard status, not like what I've already listed in the top 4. The guitar riff is the most memorable part. Rio by Duran Duran is a better example of some intro synth work, but I wouldn't call it marquee either. It's more like what Downs did after Wetton, Howe, and Palmer weren't in the band, but he was still using the Asian name. Moving on. ABC, Japan, the Pet Shop Boys, Soft Cell, Art of Noise, Devo, Berlin. Who can forget the synth bass line on Take My Breath Away? But it's simply not enough from one band, even though that song was in Top Gun. Naked Eyes, Erasure, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Level 42. Their song, It's Over, is what I would call the most melancholy hit I'd ever heard. I think it made top 40, and it just meanders. It doesn't have a strong hook. It doesn't have a big Diane Warren chorus, yet I really love the song. It's just hypnotic or something. Spandau Ballet, Men Without Hats, and Flock of Seagulls. I love a lot of the bands on this list, and I was just getting ready to show you my vinyl single of Space Age Love Song that I purchased decades ago, but I couldn't find it. I have lots of bins with vinyl in, so it's probably in another one somewhere. Some people may bring up John and Vangelis. On the other hand, some people may not know that the lead singer, John Anderson of the band Yes, and Vangelis teamed up several times to release some albums with Vangelis' synth magic and Anderson's unique voice. I love I Hear You Now, and more so I'll Find My Way Home, which is on this disc. You get both of those songs on one disc, which is nice. While I love these songs, the keyboard work, and respect Vangelis as a composer and solo artist, he just doesn't fit this list as a top 40 band keyboardist with marquee licks and marquee success in this genre. I Hear You Now, I think, made it to the 60s, and I'll Find My Way Home made it to 30-something on the charts. I know I'm probably going to get crucified in the comments because people love Vangelis, but seriously, if this list were the best composers of synth-based score, and I'm working on that list, Vangelis would be high on that list, but not here. Another thing of consequence is that many of these bands I just mentioned that weren't on the list didn't necessarily have a full-time keyboardist member of the band. On tour, that was handled by side musicians, and when recording, studio musicians were brought in. So while there are some songs with great synth licks from those bands, they were probably created by studio musicians. Last but not least, Tears for Fears. And I'm unbiased in that I didn't put them on the list, but biased in that I really wanted to. 4 hits, including 1 mega hit: Shout, Sowing the Seeds of Love, Head Over Heels, and the mega hit, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Like I said, I really wanted to put them on the list. I truly love Everybody Wants to Rule the World and its marquee intro, but it's not enough. It's a small world, let me explain. In the 70s, I lived in the same British town as Orzabal and Smith, the 2 members of this band. I even went to the same high school, but I was there 2 years after they left and only for 1 year. The thing is, I believe they are both guitarists. Perhaps they composed the synth riffs in Rule the World, but I don't know. I know I haven't seen them play keyboards with it on stage, but that doesn't mean that they didn't compose it, and obviously they need to be out front. When you see live videos, Orzabal is playing guitar and Smith is singing and sometimes playing guitar, so that is why they didn't make the list. Anyway, there are some amazing keyboard players on this short list. Hopefully I chose some of your favorites, and if not, put your top 6 in the comments and see how others react. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. Subscribe now, it's free, and I'll be back in another episode soon. Take care.